Beautiful people hide things better. That's what I learned watching the couple in the house across the street. Daniel and Elena. He's a corporate lawyer, tall, sharp suits, confident handshake. She's the kind of beautiful that stopped conversations. Dark hair, pale skin, always wearing white. They moved in 4 months ago, and everyone on Maple Street fell in love with them immediately. Everyone except me, because I'm a detective, and I notice patterns. And Elena has a pattern that doesn't make sense. She never leaves the house during the day. Never. Not for groceries, not for coffee, not for anything. But every night at 11:47 p.m., she stands at the upstairs window and stares directly at my house for exactly 9 minutes. Not looking around, not distracted, staring at me. And 3 nights ago, I realized something that made my blood go cold. In 4 months, I have never seen her blink. I started keeping a log on week 2. Professional habit. Daniel leaves every weekday at 7:15 a.m., returns at 6:30 p.m., waves to neighbors, checks the mail. Normal, but Elena is a ghost during daylight. The curtains in the front room stay drawn until sunset. No movement. No shadow crossing behind the fabric. I've watched their house during my days off. Nothing. Then at exactly 11:47 p.m., the bedroom light turns on. She appears at the window in a white nightgown, hands at her sides, face angled toward my bedroom. The first few times I thought it was coincidence. Maybe she's looking at the streetlight. Maybe she's just spacing out. But I tested it. I moved my position, stood by my kitchen window, my living room, my garage. Her eyes followed, tracked me through the glass like a security camera. I started timing her. 9 minutes, every single night. Then the light goes off and the house goes dark. I pulled the property records. The house was sold to Daniel Crawford for cash. No mortgage. Previous owner died 6 months ago. Natural causes estate sale. Nothing suspicious. But when I looked up Elena Crawford, I found nothing. No social media. No employment history. No digital footprint at all. In 2024, that's not eccentric. That's intentional. I met her on a Saturday in October. I was pulling weeds in my front yard when Daniel called out to me, "Hey neighbor, come meet my wife properly." He was smiling, golden retriever friendly. I couldn't refuse without seeming strange. I crossed the street. He opened the door wide. "Elena, come say hello." She appeared at the top of the stairs, descending slowly, each step deliberate, like she was remembering how to walk. Up close, she was even more unsettling. Flawless skin, no pores, no texture. Eyes so dark the pupils disappeared into the iris. She extended her hand. It was cold. Not cool. Cold like she'd been holding ice. "It's nice to finally meet you," she said. Her voice was smooth but flat. No regional accent. No tonal variation. Like someone reading a script phonetically. I shook her hand. Her grip was firm, but her fingers didn't adjust to mine. Just pressure. Uniform. Wrong. "You live alone?" she asked. "Ido. That must be lonely." She tilted her head. Not like a question, like an observation or a threat. Daniel laughed, oblivious. "Elena's a bit of a homebody. She works remotely, graphic design." I nodded, asked what company. She smiled, lips only. "Freelance. I keep irregular hours." That's when I noticed her hands. No calluses, no ink stains, no cuts or scars. I've never met a graphic designer who doesn't have something on their hands. I excused myself, went home, ran her name through every database I had access to. Nothing. Elena Crawford didn't exist before 4 months ago. I started pulling threads. I contacted the estate lawyer who handled the previous owner's sale. Old man named Gerald Finch. Died in his sleep. No surviving family. The lawyer said the house sold fast. Cash offer. No inspection. Closed in 2 weeks. Buyer never toured the property in person. Everything handled through a proxy LLC. I got the LLC name. Silver Lake Holdings. Traced it to a shell company in Delaware. Dead end. But I kept digging. I found Gerald Finch's obituary and started researching his life. Retired librarian. Widower. No children. Then I found something in a local news archive from 1983. A missing persons case. A woman named Elena March vanished from the same neighborhood, 3 blocks from Finch's house. She was 26, dark hair, pale skin, last seen wearing a white dress. The case went cold. No body, no leads. But in the article, there was a grainy photo. I enhanced it using forensic software. My hand shook as the image cleared. It was her, same face, same eyes, exact same, but that was 41 years ago. The woman across the street from me looks 26. I cross-referenced dental records that were on file from the original missing persons case. They'd taken an impression from her childhood dentist when she first disappeared. I pulled strings I shouldn't have pulled, called in favors from the county coroner's office, got access to the digital archives, ran a biometric facial mapping analysis comparing the 1983 photograph to screenshots I'd taken from my own surveillance footage. 12 points of identical bone structure, matching asymmetry in the left eye socket, a small scar above the right eyebrow visible in both images. The software gave me a 97% probability match. It was impossible, but the data didn't lie. I went back through Gerald Finch's records, found his library employment history. He worked in the archives, rare books, local history, occult collections, and in 1984, 1 year after Elena March disappeared, he requested a 6-month leave of absence. Reason listed, personal research. I made a mistake. I got too close. Last Tuesday, I decided to check their trash. It's legal. Once it's on the curb, it's public domain. I waited until 2 a.m., crossed the street, opened the bin. It was empty, completely. No food waste, no packaging, no mail, nothing. They'd lived there 4 months, and there was no trash. I heard the front door open, froze. Elena stood on the porch in her white nightgown, backlit by the hallway light. She didn't call out, didn't move, just watched me. I walked back to my house, forcing myself not to run. I could feel her eyes on my spine. When I reached my door, I turned. She was still there, motionless. Then she raised one hand and pointed at me. Not waving, pointing like marking a target. I went inside, locked every door and window, pulled my service weapon from the safe, and kept it on my nightstand. At 11:47 p.m., she appeared at the window as usual, but this time she wasn't alone. Daniel stood behind her, hands on her shoulders, both staring, both utterly still. I closed my curtains. I didn't sleep. At 3 a.m., I heard my doorknob rattle, slowly, testing. I grabbed my gun and moved toward the front door, keeping my breathing controlled the way they taught us at the academy. Checked the peephole, nothing but empty street and sodium light. But my gut told me someone had just been there. When I reviewed my doorbell camera footage the next morning, there was a single frame, timestamped 3 o'clock and 14 seconds a.m. Elena's face, inches from the lens, fish-eyed by the wide angle. She was smiling. Not a human smile, too wide, too symmetrical, like something had studied smiles and reproduced the geometry without understanding the emotion. Behind her in the frame, barely visible in the darkness, I could make out Daniel's silhouette. He was holding something that looked like a rope or a cord coiled in his hands. I saved the footage to 3 separate drives and sent copies to my personal email. Then I started making calls. I broke protocol, called in a favor with a cold case detective I trust, sent him everything I had on Elena March. He called me back 6 hours later, voice tight. "You need to hear this." In 1984, Gerald Finch confessed to a priest that he'd done something unforgivable to keep his wife alive. His wife, Margaret, had been dying of cancer. Finch became obsessed with fringe research, texts on preservation, suspension, transference. The priest reported it to police, but no evidence of a crime was found. Margaret Finch had already died, death certificate signed, body cremated. Case closed. But here's the thing. Margaret Finch's maiden name was Elena March. I sat with that for a full minute. Then it clicked. Finch didn't kill Elena March. He made her, or remade her. Something in those occult texts taught him how to bring back his wife, but not fully. Not right. Whatever Elena is now, she's not alive. She's a loop, a script, a thing wearing skin. And Daniel? I ran his financials. Every penny he has came from an inheritance from Gerald Finch, a distant nephew who didn't know his uncle, who was given the house, and the thing inside it. I'm writing this at 11:42 p.m. I've packed a bag. I'm leaving tonight because 5 minutes ago, I got a text from an unknown number. It said, "She's awake now. She remembers everything, and she knows you know." My detective friend called me back with one final piece of information. Gerald Finch's research notes have been donated to the university's special collections after his death. He managed to access the catalog. One entry stood out, a leather journal titled The Preservation of Essence, a practical application. The journal described a ritual requiring a surrogate, someone who physically resembled the deceased. Elena March hadn't just disappeared. She'd been transformed, hollowed out, rebuilt as a vessel for Margaret Finch's consciousness. But the process was unstable. It required periodic renewal, a fresh anchor. My friend's voice dropped to a whisper. The ritual needs a witness, someone who sees her for what she is. That's you. The bedroom light just turned on across the street. But this time, Elena isn't alone at the window. There are 3 figures: Daniel, Elena, and someone else. Someone who looks exactly like me. I'm not waiting to see what happens at 11:47.